Go to the phones. We've got Taylor Zarzour joining us. He's on the call tomorrow on the SEC Network, Arkansas versus Texas A&M, along with Matt Stinchcomb and Alyssa Lang. Taylor, thanks for calling in today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you guys?
We are excited about this football game tomorrow. Everybody usually is when it comes to Arkansas versus Texas A&M inside the natural state. And I just wonder who the heck set the line here at 12.5, and it started at 15 because you look at the series history between these programs in the last 8 years. Is usually a really, really close game, and that does not matter how bad Arkansas has been of late. So I know you got to be ready for a tight one, too.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the case every year. The one part you left out is it usually is a very close, heartbreaking Arkansas loss in 5 of the last 6, at least, in 3 of those games going to overtime. And as you're alluding to, the last few years where it's been a touchdown game or less. And, yeah, I mean, that's my expectation again, especially given the improvement you have seen from the Razorbacks so far this season. And this is a team that doesn't look anything like the one that I was calling last year or the year before. I think the amount of confidence and leadership that Sam Pittman and Barry Odom are coaching the team with that has led to great play from guys that either are walk-ons right now or used to be walk-ons is really remarkable. I mean, that's everything that a fan would want when they're watching their football team.
One of the conversations we've centered around throughout the week, and we already mentioned it this morning. I wonder your thoughts on this because Texas A&M's strength defensively is stopping the run. Arkansas's weakness offensively is run blocking. And so a lot of folks are saying they think that the Hogs are going to have to establish the run. And I keep saying I think it might be the other way around. I think they have to establish the pass first to enable to get the ball rolling on the ground. And I wonder what you think from the research you've done on Texas A&M.
Well, you're right about A&M being one of the best run-stopping teams in the country. And Mississippi State had -2 yards rushing the last time A&M played a football game. And even Alabama was well below their average running for just over 100 yards when A&M played them a few weeks ago. Yeah, I can see why you would say that, so that A&M will respect Felipe Franks throwing the football, which could open up the running game for Smith and for Boyd. But I do think that Rakeem Boyd is huge in this game, that he has not, and obviously through the injury, not going to Auburn, being so limited the week before that, has not shown his best stuff and seemed to be skittish a bit, as we saw in the Ole Miss game with Smith being the more effective tailback. I think that Boyd is going to have to insert himself on Saturday night and be effective, regardless of how it looks, though, if it is, as you're saying, the pass setting up the run or vice versa. I think it's so important for Felipe Franks in Arkansas to get off to a hot start. You know, my colleague Matt Stinchcomb was asking Kendall Briles the other day, do you think that Franks is kind of a slow starter, needs to kind of get comfortable as the game goes on? That's been the case in almost every game. And Kendall said, maybe it's our whole offense that is that way. And you really have. You've seen that. You've seen a team that, especially in the first few weeks, was struggling getting going offensively at the beginning of the game. And Kendall is huge on getting the first down. He thinks that if you get the first down, you have about a 75-80% chance of scoring points in his offense. That's been the case through the last 5 years, no matter where he's been. So I think that's extremely important for Arkansas on Saturday night, assuming that Arkansas doesn't have a massive advantage in turnovers, which has been the case several times this year. If it's more of a clean game, then I think the Razorbacks are going to have to get going in a hurry.
And I think that's all. I mean, you look at A&M offensively, and what Arkansas needs to do defensively is force A&M into third and long, like a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, more than a handful of times. You want to force Kellen Mond to put the ball in the air. It's not like he's been, throwing a ton of interceptions this year, but that's where Arkansas's strength is, this ball-hawking secondary and these linebackers that also can go back and cover. So, A&M's going to try to establish that run on 1st and 2nd down. For me, if Arkansas has them 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, I think they're going to be in really good shape.
I agree completely, and it's because that's not Kellen Mond's strength. Mond is not great throwing football down the field. In fact, I'll go ahead and tell you, we got a stat we're going to show you tomorrow night on 20-yard throws. Kellen Mond is only 43% completion percentage this year. So I know you're talking about 3rd and 6, but if he has to throw the ball past 10 yards down the field and try to be effective throwing the football using his arm, that's exactly what Barry Odom and Arkansas want to see on Saturday night. The problem with that plan, though, is getting to 3rd and 6, because this might be the best offensive line in the SEC. Alabama is always in that conversation. Kentucky has a really good offensive line this year. Tennessee has an improved offensive line. Georgia's always in that conversation. But Texas A&M, guys, has not given up a sack since the Vanderbilt game, and they gave up 2 in the first half of that first game of the year. And since then, the Maroon Goons, as they call themselves, that offensive line for A&M has been sensational, not allowing any sacks. So Arkansas's defensive front, most likely playing without Dorian Gerald. We'll see if he's able to go again on Saturday night, but knowing he's a game-time decision and he's been iffy, if those guys, if the Arkansas defensive front can get past that A&M offensive line, that would be huge for them to have a chance to be successful in forcing those 3rd and longs.
Taylor Zarzour here with us on halftime. He'll be calling the Razorback Texas A&M game this weekend on the SEC Network. Taylor, when you look at this matchup, I think, and we've had a lot of our listeners text in and say the same thing, I just want to get your opinion. Whoever comes away with the W in this game, for at least for the next week or two, does this solidify who the second best team in the SEC is?
Or at least the SEC West, right?
SEC West,
you're
yes.
saying
SEC West, excuse me, yes. SEC West,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, and by the way, the answer might be the entire SEC if it's A&M. As crazy as this may sound, let's just go from the A&M standpoint first quickly before we get to the Razorbacks. But if all of us talking right now think that Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State are massive favorites to get to the college football playoff, as is typically the case, and Lawrence, let's hope, makes a full recovery from COVID, and those 3 teams are huge favorites. Well, who's the 4th team going to be? Big 12's already just about imploded. I don't think many people have a lot of confidence in the Pac-12 on an annual basis. In the group of 5, even though BYU and Cincinnati look really good, they're not playing any Power 5 teams. So if that's the case, then who's the 4th team going to be? I would argue that A&M, who's going to be favored probably in every single game they play, they're not going to go to the SEC championship game. They're going to finish the season 9-1 if they win all these games as favorites. They could still be in the college football playoff discussion. So I don't think there's any question. Not only would they be the favorite to be the second best team in the SEC West, they could be the entire SEC and maybe even have still a shot to get into some meaningful games in January. If it's Arkansas and they win this game on Saturday night, especially given what happened against Auburn, the way they beat Ole Miss and beat Mississippi State, yeah, I think they're very much in the conversation to be the second best team in the West. Of course, they still have to play LSU, and I think they're going to get better and better as the season goes on with all these fresh faces. But what a remarkable job, regardless of what happens on Saturday night, Sam Pittman is doing. And just, again, being around this program as much as I was the last couple of years, it is, I'm sure as Arkansas fans are so jubilant about, it's incredible to see the progress he's made.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a deeper dive in that because how weird is it that 2 months ago, if I'd have asked you that question right there, would Arkansas be the second best team in the SEC West? I think a lot of people would just laugh in your face like, are you serious? No, from where the Razorbacks have been the past 2-3 years and the transformation that Sam Pittman, Barry Odom, Kendall Browse has made to this team, it's astounding. I mean, and yes, it's 2-2, and there's who knows what the rest of the season will work out. But just from the competitive nature that the Razorbacks are able to bring to the field, I don't think anybody, I don't even think Arkansas fans expected this quick of a turnaround in year one under Sam Pittman.
It's incredible. It's one of the best jobs we're seeing in all of college football. You combine that with the injury to Bumper Pool, Grant Morgan with one arm having the game of his life, Rakeem Boyd never really being that effective so far this season. Busta Brown's been banged up. I mean, you have all of those things, you would have said, okay, Arkansas and Vanderbilt are going to fight for the doormat in the SEC if you threw all those things at it on top of what you just said. And I have to tell you, when I was calling those Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Western Kentucky games last year, I was thinking, I don't know how they're going to keep Chad Morris, but how in the world can they afford to buy him out, and they're still paying Bielema, and the stadium's half empty? I mean, this is such a mess, and how are they going to figure this out? And I have to give Hunter Yurachek and Arkansas a lot of credit for saying, you know what, we have to sell some hope. We've got to bring somebody in that's going to be one of us, that is going to unite the fan base, get people enthusiastic to come to the games once COVID is over with, and there'll be some real momentum with Arkansas's program. That was a tough decision to make, and they made the right one. And, the biggest thing I've noticed talking to the players, doing this, my second Arkansas game so far this year, and talking to Sam and talking to Barry Odom, is that Sam is not a motivational speaker, as you guys I'm sure have seen. He's not a guy that's going to go in the locker room and he's going to give you some meaningful, inspiring quote. He's just going to show you how to live. He's going to use his words very carefully, and then when he's ever around the program, he is going to show them what it's like to be a professional and what it's like to be a leader. And that's really rubbed off on the entire team, is just the way he carries himself instead of being somebody that is using all these phrases. He's just walking the walk right now, and I can understand why it's such a breath of fresh air.
Taylor, before we let you go, I do play-by-play too for Arkansas baseball, women's basketball. I've done football and everything. I don't know how you do radio play-by-play or swing-by-swing for golf. Taylor is the radio voice of golf's major championships, so I know you got to be pretty fired up to be doing the Masters, no matter when it is, but certainly next month. How long have you done golf play-by-play? Is it called play-by-play, or is it something else? And that's difficult to do, man. That really says something.
Yeah, I've been doing it for 8 years, and it is, you have to be able to never stop talking. I mean, I'm sure as you guys are so familiar listening to radio broadcasts of football or basketball, baseball, or any other sport, you do have to be the listeners, all of their senses. And in golf, you really have to do that as well. The difference in golf as opposed to the other sports is the game is not right in front of your face. You're using a monitor to call almost all of it. And you're at the course, typically, around the 18th hole somewhere, and you can watch what's happening in front of you there, but you have every monitor at your disposal. So it's very similar to the way that a television broadcast would be done. You're just saying a whole lot more than they are. So I have to tell you, it's a whole lot of fun. I've gone to all those major championships. The last 8 years has been a labor of love, and the one you just referenced is going to be, I think, the most unique sporting event we've ever seen in terms of where it is on the calendar. I know we've had some displaced events so far this year with the NBA Finals, with where it was, and the Kentucky Derby and the U.S. Open, but the Masters in November is truly going to be surreal, and to have all the fall colors there instead of the Easter colors is going to be a strange, unique experience, but I can't wait for it.
Well, and certainly the look of Augusta will be different. The weather will be different. Does the course play differently based upon the time of the year? I mean, does this tournament play differently than it usually would, on your opinion?
I really wish that the late, great Frank Broyles was still around to be part of this interview, because he might be one of the most important Augusta National members ever, and loved playing that golf course around the holidays. And if you go way back in the archives, you can actually watch him doing the interviews in Butler Cabin. But yes, I do think that it is going to play differently. I think the golf course will play a little bit longer. Just that if you went out to any great course in the state of Arkansas, it wouldn't be so dissimilar in terms of the grass this time of year not getting nearly as much rollout, the humidity not being as high. So the golf course from tee to green is going to play a little bit longer. The greens won't, though. The greens will still be just as quick. They can set those up and have them just as fast as they would be in April. The weather is going to be a little tricky. Guys, I live in Charlotte, about 2.5 hours north of the course, and the temperatures aren't that cooler this time of year, but we can have a much bigger gap. It can be 85 one day and 45 the next. There's much more of inconsistent weather patterns this time of year than there typically is in April. But I can't wait for this to happen, and I think all of us are fascinated to see how far Bryson's going to hit it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for your time, Taylor. Have a great call
Taylor.
tomorrow. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.